Look, on Leadership Now, I promised never to do commercials, but here we are. Why? Well, I have a new book in the works. It's coming out spring 2026, and I wanted to give you an advance heads up about it. The title, The Future of Work is Gray, and it's kind of a big deal to me because the book dives into the age crisis that's reshaping work as we know it. It's something that I call age debt, but spoiler alert, it does turn into some solution. There's some hope, there's some positive, and that's called the experience dividend. So if your workplace still thinks that age is a liability, well, it's time to retire that mindset. In fact, we might want to retire the word retire. So yeah, I don't do ads. This is a special occasion, and for it, I am willing to go gray. And maybe Grey Goose will sponsor me, not sure. Anyway, spring 2026, the future of work is gray. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Leadership Now with me, Dan Pontefract, in the house today. Maria Franzoni. Maria Franzoni, welcome to the show. Let me quickly do a bio about you and your wonderful career, and then we'll get right into a conversation about speakers, keynotes, the keynote industry itself, and so on. So Maria, you're one of the world's most experienced speaker bookers. You've held roles at two of Europe's leading bureaus, including CSA Celebrity Speakers and, of course, London Speakers Bureau, which the New York Times illustrated it and described it as, quote, the only international speaker bureau. Holy jumping. And then just about, 17-ish years ago, 18, you founded your own multi-million pound international bureau, Maria Franzoni Limited. Across more than 20 years in the industry, you've raised standards for bureaus, agents, speakers by constantly innovating and mentoring dozens of future leaders in the field, maybe even me once, thank you. You've worked with the incredible likes of folks like Neil Armstrong, Anita Roddick, Sir Bob Geldof, I've got a story about him for you, Sir Richard Branson, Liza Minnelli, and Canadian Jacques Villeneuve. Thank God. There's a Canadian on the list. Franzoni, founding member and former co-chair of the European Association of Speaker Bureaus. You are also the director of operations at We Do Things Differently, a cultural change consultancy, and you are the founder and chief mentor of the wonderful Speaking Business Academy. And since June 2020, that academy has helped more than 400 speakers sharpen their commercial edge through programs, coaching, ancillary services. And you also host the wonderful Speaking Business podcast, where leaders and experts share practical tactics for securing bookings and being better speakers. Known for your direct, no-nonsense approach, which I can attest to, you deliver actionable strategies to achieve exceptional results, from understanding what makes the most booked speakers successful to navigating industry challenges. Maria, you talk and walk, and what you do is both practical and inspiring. You provide audiences with a very rare behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to succeed in today's very competitive speaker and bureau landscape. So here we are, Leadership Now. We want to talk a little bit today about, obviously, the speaker industry, the business of being a speaker, the business inside bureaus, etc. But I actually wanted to take a step back and talk a bit about you. And where I want to go here, Maria, is what got you so interested in this industry? I mean, there's lots to talk about it, but what about Maria and the keynote speaking industry? What is it that keeps you going? How'd you get interested in it? And tell us a bit about that sort of panache that you have for the industry itself.
Actually, Dan, thank you for that incredible introduction. I've got to live up to that now. So in terms of getting interested in the industry, I wasn't interested in the industry. I had no idea it existed, if I'm honest about it. Okay. And so in 1998, there was a cryptic advert that was looking for people. I was looking for a new career, looking for a new job, a new challenge. And the advert said, can you negotiate at senior level? And I had been a management consultant and had sat opposite some of the most senior people, senior leaders, that will apply to you, like you work with leaders, telling them what was wrong with their business. I've spent a lot of time criticizing businesses and people, actually. There's a thread there, isn't there?
Yeah.
And so I was curious because I thought I could do that. What I didn't realize was that the people that I would be negotiating with at senior level were clients on one side and then very senior speakers on the other side, some of the names you've mentioned already. And that's how I got into it by accident because I thought this really appeals to me. This sounds fascinating because it allowed me to keep learning about business and learning about
Mhm.
topics that interested me from both the client side and the speaker side. And that's what keeps me interested, really, is that you're constantly learning. I'm learning from speakers, I'm learning from clients, and the people that you're working with. It's like rarefied air. You're working with the best of the best. It's not real life. It's just extraordinary.
So I guess somewhere between full disclosure and mea culpa, I am in the keynote speaker industry. I don't necessarily all the time call myself a keynote speaker. It's part of what I do, my sort of pie graph of things. So there's the consultancy stuff, there's the executive work stuff, etc. But I am very proud to be in this industry. And I've been doing keynotes or talks, sometimes they're not keynotes, of course, since about 2008. And I've noticed changes in the industry, but you've been in this game a lot longer and focus very specifically on it. How do you, I guess, depict the evolution of the speaker industry for whatever number you want to pick, maybe the last 15 years or so? I'm curious from your vantage point because being in it, I've seen some things, but you're in it in a different way, although you do speak as well. Let's be clear for listeners and viewers. So tell us a bit about how you've seen it evolve over the years.
Well, first of all, I love the fact that you don't call yourself a keynote speaker because one of the things that has changed and evolved over the years is the fact that speakers aren't seen as keynote speakers anymore. They're seen more as partners, as problem solvers, as
Mm,
a route to deal with whatever an organization is dealing with. Whereas when I started back in 1998, it was very much about keynote speakers coming in, delivering, and going out. There wasn't a longer term relationship. And now I'm seeing more and more, both from bureau point of view, where they're trying to develop longer relationships with each speaker when they put them in, and also speakers themselves are looking more holistically rather than just at a speech. So that's a change, and that's happened gradually, and I think it's a really positive change. What hasn't changed, I think, is the expectation of clients. And I think many people are saying that the industry's changed a lot. But what's really not changed is the expectation of clients to have their audience move from A to B. And we mustn't forget that's what they're buying. That's what the client wants. They want their audience to either think, feel, or do something differently. That has not changed. And I suppose what has changed though dramatically in the last 15 years, in the last nearly 30 years that I've been in the industry, it was 1998, wow, is that the number of speakers there are is exponential. Now there's so many more speakers. Everybody's a speaker because we're as soon as we can say words, we can speak, right? So there's no barrier to entry, which is a part of the problem, really. There's a lot of speakers out there. When I started, there weren't. It was the same names you saw over and over and over again on the circuit. And now anybody can be a speaker, and you have access now to anybody. You can reach people. There used to be 6 degrees of separation. You can get to somebody probably in two or three now, in two or three steps, and that's what's changed dramatically. So you have to stand out now because there's a lot more noise.
mm. So that's I'm so glad I heard this answer. How does one stand out? Meaning you have digital proliferation, you have distractedness, seemingly like a tsunami overcoming buyers, clients, even audience members itself. So what is it that distinguishes these days the I guess the repeatable business speaker, booked speaker, I should say, versus those that are the wannabes that call themselves speakers but aren't getting booked?
Yeah, I think that the thing I see most, the speakers that really get it are those that position themselves properly, that you immediately understand this is what I'm going to get, this is what they're talking about, this is the outcome, and it's positioned and relevant. The topic is relevant, they're relevant, and they're bringing something that is needed now. So it's not only relevant to a problem, but it's relevant to a pressing problem that needs to be dealt with. So it's sort of that positioning. And also, I think the speakers that do a really good job and get booked most are able to pitch themselves. You have to pitch yourself now, whether you're pitching to a bureau, whether you're pitching on your website, whether you're pitching in person. You've got to be able to do that. And many speakers, you can talk to them for half an hour and you still have no idea what their credibility is with regards to the topic they talk about. or in some cases, what they even talk about. So it's that clarity, I think, is the differentiator.
And actually, lovely to go down this particular wormhole. Clarity. So there are individuals who have been known for something for, decades, quite frankly, and there are others that seem to be malleable and either complement existing expertise and competence with newfound knowledge or client work, research, etc. You can see certain speakers, maybe even they are authors, who just hone in on something, and that's what they're known for versus perhaps those that are a little more wide than they are deep. Do you see that being as a benefit one way or the other? Are they both benefits depending on the buyer, depending on the client?
It definitely depends on the buyer, on the client, and also on the individual who's able to do that, because not everybody can do that, that they can adapt. And I call those types of speakers curators of knowledge, if you like, or creators of
Ooh.
answers, where they will go and they see the situation and they'll do the research and they'll gather the information and they'll do that legwork for you. Of course, you can use AI to a certain extent now, but the fact that a human's doing it, they're doing it from a different lens, they're doing it from a different view, and they're going to present it in a different way. So yes, I like to refer to them as, and no one's ever asked me that question, by the way. It's a really good question. My particular preference is somebody that goes really deep into a topic and maybe shines a different lens on it or makes me think about something in a different way. That's my personal preference. But as you say, it's about the buyer.
I call it actually the competence T, like a capital T, where if you're able to fly by at a width perspective, that's really good because you can get different areas of a particular topic or different topics. And then if you have the ability still to go deep, then therefore, the audience wins too. So you're kind of, as the bureau agent hiring someone, you're like, oh, look, they can do these things along the top. But if they're able to also go deep, which is rare, but if they can, fantastic. I mean, it's a win-win.
Yeah, brilliant.
No, I try, Maria. I'm no Maria Franzoni, but I try. I try. So, given the fact this is called Leadership Now, I also wanted to talk about the leadership piece to this industry, both from the bureau side and obviously the keynote speaker side. You touched on it just recently, and I want to come back to it, and that's the positioning part. So, rather than being a trend chaser, you speak of being problem solvers, being pragmatic problem solvers. So, I'm curious, can you elaborate on that philosophy a little bit more so that we, the listener and the viewer, can understand the significance from a leadership perspective of you running a business as a bureau or a keynote speaker, why that's so significant in today's market and economy?
I think, in simple terms, a booker, a client, wants to feel understood before they care about you. And in order for them to feel understood, they want to know that you have considered their situation, you know what's going on for them, you know how things are showing up for them before you then start saying to them, this is what I can talk about. And
Mm.
to understand them, you have to understand either their problems or their aspirations. And most people will pay more to solve a problem than they will to achieve a goal, oddly enough. And so that's why I talk about focusing on the problems. I'm glad we're on a podcast because anybody watching the video would see that I've got hands waving everywhere. I'm very Italian.
That's part of the charm that you have, Maria. Of course it does. Okay, so but in positioning, some folks it seemed just to sort of throw water on a bit of a fire back to 2020. It seemed like there were some bureaus, even keynote speakers and speakers themselves, were caught a little bit blindsided by the pandemic, which we were leading and inching into before it anyway, which was sort of the rise of virtual events, the rise of doing things differently across digital platforms. Now, where I'm going with this is, as I've mentioned to you on occasion, I'm a recovering chief learning officer, which means that, being in executive tech companies and telecom, my job was to make sure that culture, leadership development, employee engagement, all that good stuff, performance was happening at a very grand, international scale. And so I always thought and was thinking about the team member, right? The employee, the individual whom, whether they're a leader or not, needed to think through how they could feel good, but also deliver. So here enter digital platforms and what was, I suppose, right, the way in which to deliver, which was a keynote for 60 minutes, tell the speech, get off the stage, so to say, Like things really got disrupted permanently in 2020. Tell us a bit about, I guess, your thoughts on how bureaus have had to adapt, how speakers have had to adapt. Like, what is it these days, now 5 years on, that you see as the continued evolution with digital in mind?
I love that evolution personally because I think it gives you so much more scope to do more for your employees. I don't know if you agree as a chief learning officer, but to get people together in person is much harder than to have people on a virtual platform. And there's a study by American Express, I can share the link with you,
Hmm.
predicting the numbers in 2025 in terms of how what the split is. And it's approximately 20% virtual and approximately 20% hybrid. One of them is 21%. I can't remember which one it is, but
Yeah.
we're looking around 41% total. And then 59% we're looking at in person. So the virtual is still there, very much so. What I've seen is that the virtual has become more interactive.
Hmm.
And it seems to be more about workshop and learning as opposed to speaking. Whereas in the pandemic, we saw people just trying to deliver their keynote from their computer, as opposed to trying to involve the audience. And it does need to be interactive, I think. So that's what we're seeing. That's what we're predicting. Hybrid doesn't seem to have been the big answer, the big solution that everybody expects to be. It is 20% is a small number. And I think that's because it's rather expensive to do.
Yeah.
And also it's quite difficult to do really well. So I see virtual staying. I personally love it. I think it's a great inexpensive way. And I've seen organizations go from doing one or two really large events a year to doing tens of them throughout the year instead, and adapting and using the budget in a different way. I quite like that.
I actually a good example. So Virgin Media O2 in the UK hired me, and as opposed to doing a singular event, we did 10 1 hour events, smaller audience sizes, and I sort of there came up with the term the key shop, Maria. I was like, I
Very
got to
good.
tell them what my idea is. So it's kind of this blend between where a practical virtual workshop would occur, but then, of course, there's keynote pieces. So it'd be sort of like, how do you parse this up for 60 minutes where there's a little bit of edutainment, right? Entertainment, education. And we teach and sort of deliver stories, and then they can have a breakout or something that we do that's within themselves, polling, quizzes, surveys, like word clouds, some things to get interactive with their phones, and then the next segment. And so you kind of had 3 or 4 segments, and this idea of key shop worked really well, at least for Virgin Media O2 in this case. Not to toot my horn, I'm just saying that I'm giving you an example.
Yeah, you see, I was just spying on you. I was just repeating what I'd seen you do. There you go.
Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the industry itself, and again, whether it's bureaus or speakers themselves, just curious the establishment and the sustainability of both the bureau, because we've seen some come and go. Not everyone is LSB, but what should speakers and bureaus be thinking about in this day and age for the next 5 years in terms of their establishment and sustainability in the business of the keynote industry?
I think differentiation is my word actually for this,
Ah,
because if you look at bureaus, unless you know the bureaus very well, you don't know why you would go to one bureau or rather than another bureau. And I think bureaus need to differentiate more than they currently are because they're looking a little bit too much all the same. And yet,
ah,
when you know them better, you know that actually that's the bureau I'd go to for futurists or creativity speakers, and that one is the bureau I'd go to for financial or economics. But I don't think they're making it that positioning as I guess it's positioning again, right? They're
yeah.
not making it as strong a case as they could. And the other challenge that bureaus are facing, we can go on to speakers after. The other challenge that bureaus are facing is we've got AI now, of course, that can do a lot of the legwork for clients. But what AI can do, which is really clever, of course, is they can search bureau websites for the speakers that maybe the client should be booking. So
Ah,
it's like, because the bureaus have already curated the list, they've already done the legwork of saying these people are people who are trustworthy. And now you can go and search those. So the bureau really has to, I think, change and say, what are we offering now? And this is, I think, it's a stronger case now than ever before. What can we offer to the client so they don't cut us out? Because I think that with AI, this is the biggest disruption for bureaus now. When when the internet came out, when LinkedIn came out, when Twitter came out, and you could get to people much more easily, we all thought, oh gosh, bureaus, what's going to happen? And they continue to be important and relevant.
Right.
They've got to stay important and relevant. And it's the same for speakers, differentiation. Why book Dan as opposed to another speaker on the same topic?
Interesting. So, and we'll get to speakers in a second because niche, I think, is one of the words I heard you say. And I think that's interesting. I have a personal example from about a month ago. A chap in the sort of middle of America emailed me and said, I represent an ag tech speaker bureau. I was like, ag tech speaker bureau? That is so niche. I've never even. So I asked if I could do this thing on leadership, et cetera. And of course, I said yes, and we booked it. But it was an agriculture speaker bureau
I
and it
love
had a
that.
technology focus. Like
I
that's what,
love that.
yeah,
Love that.
I know. I
Now,
was just
who
totally
else?
floored.
And who else is out there? And you remember, it's the probably the only. I love that.
Okay, so speakers themselves. So tell us a bit again about being a sustainable keynote speaker in the business. Like I know that's a very broad question, but maybe just some tips and tricks from the Franzoni land.
Well, from Franzoni land, let me reference something I've been working on for the last, oh gosh, 8 to 10 months. I've been working on my book, which is called Bookability, and it's based on the Bookability Formula.
Yes,
So
go ahead.
this was developed from studying the data from London Speaker Bureau and my own bureau and looking at what the 1% most booked speakers, what their characteristics were compared to everybody else. Why that 1% was booked across it for LSB across 25 offices in 18 countries, why it was the same people,
Hmm.
and what made those people bookable. And I think this is probably what you're looking for in terms of an answer. And they had the four characteristics they had were that they were relevant, obviously, to a paying market, relevant to that pressing problem, which we've mentioned already, that they were known by the right people. You don't have to be known by everybody, but they were known by the right people. So they were known whether it was specifically in an industry or specifically by a group of maybe a specific type of people like HR people, but they were known,
Okay.
which obviously with your books, that helps, right? So if you've got lots of books, that's great. Then they were memorable. There's something that it made them memorable. And that's so important when you think about how many speakers there are, especially in the speaker bureau. There are thousands of speakers. Some boast tens of thousands of speakers.
Yeah.
How do you remember those individuals? What makes them memorable? And then the last characteristic is that they were easy. So that's easy to find, easy to book, easy to work with, and easy to listen to. That is so important and so underestimated. People take that for granted, being easy. And sometimes that will trump everything else because people haven't got time. Organizers, meeting planners don't have time. They don't want stress. They want a safe pair of hands that's easy to do business with.
That tracks, as the Gen Z say. And the whole be easy too, because I've been on the other side hiring speakers as well. I even still do it for some of the consultancy work that I do, my retainers. And so when you're dare I say, Maria, sort of a prima donna, and someone who is uneasy, difficult even to do business with, whether that's the contract or the setup on stage, or you only have one type of water and things like this. Like you just make it very friction full as opposed to frictionless. Then you become memorable for your point three in the way you don't want to be memorable.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, the other two elements of the formula, there's those elements. Ego divides everything. Ego is important, but if it's too big, it's a divider. And then you've got a multiplier, which is value, the value that you bring, and how you articulate that value. So the articulation of that value is really important as well for speakers. But no, you're absolutely right. And when you mention water, I could probably tell you if we've both experienced the same speaker, we probably both know exactly who that is. I bet we'll talk about that afterwards because I think I know exactly who that was.
Oh gosh. See, this isn't a kiss and tell show. We are here just to stay with facts. So we'll leave that one for in the green room, my friend. Okay. You touched on it a few times and I haven't asked the question, so we might as well ask the question now. With your prescient crystal ball in hand, how is AI affecting or will it affect sort of both the bureau and the speaker? And here's a little bit of the setup. I received, again, about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, my first inquiry that came via Chat GPT. So
Wow.
this wonderful woman in Minneapolis rings me up. Well, obviously emailed me and say, "Hey Dan, can we talk? I have this engagement in the fall." And I was like, "Of course, right?" Went through my process in which that you helped me craft anyway. And so as we get into talk, I'm like, "Oh, so how'd you find out about me?" She's like, "Well, you're not going to believe this, but I put in all my coordinates to ChatGPT, and you were the first to come up." And I thought, I have never heard that before in my life. So, nonetheless, that's my little AI chat GPT story. So, how do you see, I guess, and again, both worlds, AI playing a part going forward?
So I'm no AI expert, I have to say, but I am an AI fan. I love AI, and I think that in the same way that there's the saying that it's not you're not going to lose your job to AI, you're going to lose your job to people that use AI. It's the same, I think, for speakers and
Mm,
for bureaus. That AI can really make you far more productive and also, change how you do business. I do think that going forward, people will be using AI more and more to search instead of using Google, especially as you can talk to it. I mean, I have my AI on my phone. I've given my AI a name. His name is Leonard. It is ChatGPT. I talk to him and, I often brainstorm with him and I get him to do my research. I was researching for something for my car and I just said to him, please go and search. I'm in the UK. This is my budget. Please go find. And he found what I needed.
yeah.
And I can see people doing that with speakers too. So I'm not surprised that you've got that. I'm thrilled for you that you've come up as number one. So that's really important. So I can see that changing. But also things like writing proposals. It makes life so easy. Meeting
Ah,
notes. I use an AI for meeting notes. You've experienced it. And I take the meeting notes and it will write a proposal for planning sessions, for doing research. For research, it's fantastic when you're researching a client or a speech. There are so many areas that you can use AI to really enhance your work and do a better job.
interesting. Okay. So, I'm no AI expert either, but I think you and I have both been probably on social media the same amount of time per se. And what I believe you do a very good job on, by the way, is your your presence on LinkedIn is one in which that it's specific, very useful, very pragmatic, and it cuts signal to noise, right? It's not fluff, but you also aren't all about you per se, and you're not demeaning. You're Maria Franzoni, who is there for a very specific purpose, and it's pleasant, it's lovely, but it is not what I see sometimes with speakers, perhaps authors as well, whom just aren't employing the right, or I guess the Maria Franzoni playbook of how to utilize social media in a way that does help you pitch and position without being the overzealous car salesperson that is just icky. Terrible word. But so I'm curious for you in terms of platforms like LinkedIn, TikToks, et cetera. Like, what are you seeing medium wise and content wise that people should be looking out for if you want to not just stand out, but not have that ickiness?
Wow, that's such a big question, isn't it? It is. Thank you very much for saying all those kind things. I'm not sure that that's entirely true, but that's really kind. So I love LinkedIn as a platform. I think it's a brilliant platform. I've stopped using X. I didn't enjoy it,
Mhm.
although I had quite a good network there. So I love LinkedIn and I think it's a good platform for speakers. And I think YouTube is another great platform for speakers, obviously for showing videos. And there are other platforms available, but the one that I've certainly focused on is that one. What do I see? I think that for me, the approach is to have a conversation
Mm.
rather than to make a sale. So I don't particularly like it when people do a post and at the end they then do their pitch at the end of each post. There's no need. People can, if they're interested in your content, they'll go and look at your profile. You don't need to pitch people. So my objective is one, I need to stop you in your tracks. So I do recommend that people try and stop people in their tracks so that they actually stop and read your content. So say something at the beginning that's going to make me stop, so I know what you're going to be talking about. Give me some good, valuable content, and then give me a way of engaging that's easy.
Mm.
Sometimes it's really difficult to comment, and sometimes I'll read a fantastic post and I don't know what to do. All I can do is like, because I don't know how to engage with it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so for me, it's about having conversations and starting conversations, but that might not be everybody else's objective. But I think that's all you can really do. You can't really create a sale from a post.
So is it about more, in your view, like rapport and sort of just connection and sort of saying, hey, this is my topic area, or these are the topic areas, these are the things that you want to be known for? Or is just another way in which to craft the portrait of who you are as that curator?
I think if you're talking about, rather than saying this is my topic, this is what I talk about your topic, talk about,
Mm.
take us behind the scenes, what's going on in your business.
Ah,
Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about something, a recent success story that you've had. So again, it's not necessarily about you, but about the outcomes that you're delivering, about, it's just clients that make them the heroes rather than you, obviously with their permission. And you don't always have to mention clients' names to make them the hero, but you're not the star of the show. It's the outcomes for your clients that should be the star of the show, I think.
yeah. So I am not famous. In fact, my kids would probably call me infamous for various things I do as a dad, but that's beside the point. That's a family thing. This isn't a therapy session, Maria. But some speakers and even clients who are buying, it's sort of like the are you a celebrity or not? So the celebrity speaker versus the non-celebrity speaker. And I wanted to get your thoughts on when is I guess what when clients will purchase a celebrity speaker and for what reasons. For those that don't know, like what is the behind the scenes, if you will, on that. And if you're a non-celebrity speaker like a me, and there's, well, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of speakers out there, as you've alluded to, in terms of people being able to speak. What should they not worry about if they're not a celebrity? And do they need to distinguish themselves in a way that's helpful?
So when I mentioned to you the 1% most booked, they weren't celebrities, not one of
Ah,
them,
interesting.
not famous. Interesting, right?
Hmm.
So you will book a celebrity, of course, but you might book one celebrity a year.
Okay.
You might do it depending if you're doing lots of events. Obviously, that's not technically true, but usually you'll book a celebrity or a big name because what we used to say in the industry, I'm sure they still do, to put bums on seats.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's either to get everybody in on time, first thing in the morning, right, for an event, or it's to get people to buy tickets to come along.
Uh,
So often it's for that. You want people to attend. And when you do bring a celebrity in, you're associated with that celebrity. So I know that every time I booked Neil Armstrong, he was my favorite, by the way, my favorite famous person.
uh,
And whenever you always remember this was the day, this was who gave me the opportunity to meet Neil Armstrong, shake his hand, and have a photograph. You'll never forget that, and that's quite good in terms of relationship and memory. In fact, I bet every single person who met him will know exactly who gave them that opportunity. So that's not a bad thing. If you're not famous, what you're doing is you're adding value. You're helping an audience move from A to B. And you are needed because there'll probably be one celebrity. There might be an opening celebrity and a closing celebrity if the organization has a nice budget. But more often than not, there's just the one. And then they need content for the rest of the conference. So there's always going to be a place for you. And who says you're not a celebrity? You can become a celebrity in an industry.
mm,
Why not? And the bureau I worked with, the very first bureau, CSA, Celebrity Speakers, it used to be called Celebrity Speakers without the CSA. Celebrity in those days meant celebrated.
uh,
Celebrated for the contribution that they'd made, for what they had done, either in business or in politics or economic, whatever it was, or in athletics or in sports. That changed over the years. That's a change that's happened in the industry. So celebrity speakers dropped the celebrity and became CSA because celebrity means something else now. But
mm.
actually, what do you want to be celebrated for, Dan? Then you're a celebrity.
I love how you've word mashed up what celebrity really is. How do you want to be celebrated as opposed to thinking, do I have to be a celebrity? Huh. Very wise words as usual. Well, in the vein of celebrities and perhaps being celebrated for one small step for Dan, I'm curious about keynote speaking itself and storytelling. So I have worked really hard as a speaker to up my game from storytelling. I thought in the beginning, because I was an academic and educator, it's more let's get practical tools first and then the odd story. And I've kind of been able to, I hope, get a 50-50 or even a 60-40 split of storytelling through practical tools and tactics, etc. So what's the Maria Franzoni um, advice when it comes to what you're looking for in the if it is a keynote? So let's just think of it, the speech, there's slides, whatever. What are you looking for from stories? How does the magic get woven in Maria's land?
It's actually quite simple, I think. And it's the same whether it's a movie or a speech or you're listening to an audiobook or whatever it is. I want to go on a journey. I want you to take me, start at the beginning and take me on a journey so that at the end of it, I'm changed in some way and that I come away with something rather than come away thinking, what was that about? Was that
And
too simple an answer?
is it the journey again? There's a follow-up because the journey can be of that topic, that content matter, etc. But then there's like the stories themselves. Do they have to interconnect? Should it be about the speaker? Is it better to have more individual stories about that, like the speaker themselves, and sort of putting in the personal narrative, or is it take yourself out, step above, and narrate a story and helpful solutions and tactics, etc., so that the audience sees that you're the guide and the facilitator, not the first person in the story?
It depends, is the answer really, because it depends on the topic and it depends on the speaker. So if you think about the world's greatest living explorer, Ranulph Fiennes, you want his stories.
Yeah.
You want to know about his disasters, about how he lost his hand. You want to know about how he raised his money. You want to know how he was expelled from, from school and all. You want to know, you want to hear his stories. Whereas somebody else, it might not be quite so relevant. So it depends on the individual. And personally, I tend to mix it up a bit. I rather would tell stories about other people than myself, but I'm not that interesting. But every now and then put something personal in. I do think it depends on the topic and it depends on the individual. I can't give you a black and white answer on
Yeah,
that
yeah.
one, really.
No worries, no worries. Okay, so tidying up here, we're just ready to land the plane. So the emerging trends, like, what are the things that we as speakers, bureaus, just the industry, even the buyers, because I play that part too. What is it that you're suggesting that we need to be on the lookout for going forward?
I think we've probably covered quite a lot of that, really, haven't
Okay,
we, in terms of what to be looking at? But I suppose going forward, the advice I'd give speakers is rather than seeing what the trend is now and getting on board with that, to try and see what's coming up in the future. And the only way to do that is to talk to your clients because the clients will be telling you what's going on in their industry, understand their industries, understand their situation, understand what they're trying to do, what their objectives are, what their goals are, because then you can start thinking about, okay, what are the hurdles they're going to have to get over to get there? Whereas if you're looking at top trending topics now, you're going to be behind the curve.
gotcha. Stay ahead, if you will.
Definitely set the
Yeah.
trend.
Well, we need one giant leap for speaker kind, I suppose. Okay, like I'm
Very
just
good. Well, that's brilliant.
trying to land the balloon here. Tell us a bit about the book, when it's coming out, and then, of course, where we can find out more about you, Maria.
Oh, if I manage to get the book out, Dan, I know you're multi writer, lots of books. I'm hoping it will be out in July, and it's called Bookability, and it's all about the proven formula to get booked and paid to speak. So it's my Bookability Formula broken down, and there's lots of examples of speakers from around the world and what they do differently. So there's a lot of tips and I'm not going to say tricks. I don't like that word, but tips and action points. It's really practical, Dan. It's practical, and a little bit of my humor is in there too. Hopefully it's still there. It hasn't been copy edited out. And to get in touch with me, I'm on LinkedIn, Maria Franzoni. My website's mariafranzoni.me. And please do connect with me on LinkedIn because, as I said, I love LinkedIn.
Well, as a individual in this industry on a sort of semi part-time basis, but having also hired you to help me out in certain facets of my own speaker business, if you're listening or watching and are interested or are already in the industry, I highly recommend Maria. She not doesn't just hold no punches per se in this no nonsense approach, but you are very good at what you do. You are able to see the forest through the trees, if you will, in the sense of what is it that you're doing or not doing and you do it in a very pragmatic and actionable, strategic way that does make you think differently about how you portray, position, and ultimately pitch yourself as a speaker. And so even just some of the work we did looking at my site and, as an example, the event planner page. Like for me, what you bestowed upon me with that wisdom and intellect was game changing, and it's helped me immensely just in positioning with an event planners page. So I just wanted to say, if you're listening and watching, go on and check out Maria's site, because if you're wanting to up your game, Maria's your person to help you do it.
Dan, that is so kind. My head is so big now, I'm not going to get out the door.
Well, I don't know how big your door is. I know your husband's handy, so maybe you'll just get some help from your hubby. All right. MariaFranzoni.me or on LinkedIn. Bookability comes out 2025, July-ish, but make sure, folks, that you at least check out the site and see what she might be able to help you out with. And thanks for watching or listening to another episode of Leadership Now with me, Dan Pontefract. Today, the one and only Maria Franzoni.